how can one automate environmental reporting and ESG reporting.
Currently, usually how reporting looks is still that people go into the system, export with the transaction code some data from SAP, and then starts creating a report with several different tables and joins and lookups. But this is actually a lot of manual effort within the companies to assess and be able to react to changes, for example.
Hi everyone. Since a couple of years, following the, I would say, much needed wave of recognition that our climate cannot wait, companies have been under increasing pressure to really demonstrate their commitment to sustainability and environmental responsibility, but also reporting. And many have made great progress, I would say, I think we can all agree, in reducing their footprint and their basically pressure on the environment that they're doing with their business. But they've also, of course, had to professionalize when it comes to reporting, especially since a new EU regulation that came into place last year. We found, however, that most of the time it's really, even though it has professionalized, still a very manual progress. And this is why Martin and I wanted to talk about this with Claudius today, who is really coac's senior expert, I think one can say, in EHS and when it comes to data analytics. So really wanted to hear, and the question of today is, how can one automate environmental reporting and ESG reporting? So thanks so much for being with us today. However, the still first question I'd like to actually ask Martin, because we want to frame this obviously a little bit, and I mentioned the new regulation. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit on what has been happening when it comes to ESG regulations?
Yeah, I think the regulations that we really look into for industry are, on the one side, we started with the EU taxonomy, and on the other side, it's the CSRD reporting. Yeah. And both regulations are currently really in a phase where the companies needs to operate, or needs to implement these reportings and fulfill also the reporting standards, basically. Yeah. And I would say both of them are quite a challenge for the industry. On the other side, it's really time pressure to implement it and to bring that forward.
Mm-hmm. And I was mentioning that you find reporting to be very manual at the moment.
Yeah.
Maybe Claudius can say a few words already and really coming to the very core of what we wanted to talk about right away. How does automation, what are the possibilities of automation already in reporting?
Okay, so let's think about how the process currently looks like for these reporting activities in big companies, right? So you usually have an SAP system or a big ERP system, and the data in the ERP systems is usually is transactional data. It changes a lot. Also, for example, this product compliance data, H codes, hazard statements, classifications, is the substance of high concern or not. This continuously changes. So there's it's volatile. There's a lot of change in that information in the ERP system. And currently, usually, how reporting looks is still that people go into the system, export with the transaction code some data from SAP, and then starts creating a report with several different tables and joins and lookups. But this is actually a lot of manual effort within the companies. And we looked at that and tried to build like a reporting landscape for product compliance information. Mm-hmm. And by that also automating the process to keep this reporting landscape up to date. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how that works usually is that, we extract the relevant data endpoints from SAP and load this information into a data lake, a product compliance data lake. And this product compliance data lake can then also the data can be pushed and populated into a company-wide data lake, for example, where we can then also add additional endpoints. For example, logistic information or sales information to get like a more holistic view. But at the very basis for ESG reporting, for sure, is product compliance data, which is currently not available in a very accessible state in the ERP system.
And especially what you were mentioning before is really the work in progress basically is being reflected there, right? Immediate changes are being shown,
Exactly. So the reports in the end are always up to date. And what is also very much possible is to assess and be able to react to changes, for example, to a classification. So you can do a certain assessment of your product portfolio in terms of what impact does that have on my ESG reporting in the end, right? If there's a substance with a new classification, for example.
Right. What are the industries for which you are currently working in that field? What type of companies can we imagine? These are huge corporates, but what industry, what sectors?
It's process industry, chemical, pharmaceutical industry, but also manufacturing companies. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what role does AI currently play in that process?
Maybe I hand over to Martin then.
Yeah, thank you. So, AI is really here powerful to structure data again so that we get information from somewhere, but typically this information, of course, cannot be easily mapped into my own system, right? And also perhaps not easily directly be used for interpretation. Mm-hmm. And that's really where AI comes in, because it can generate also content, or it can understand content at least, and then help me to integrate it to my SAP solution or any other solution in the end. But it can also generate content based on information it has learned in the past. Mm-hmm. And that's why we think and we believe that AI is such a powerful tool also for this whole context of ESG reportings. Because what the companies really have to do is to get information also to fulfill these reporting needs. Because it is the case that in some cases it's not about data that they already have typically or had to run their business in the past. And I think here AI is really game changer also, because when you think about these huge international acting companies, then they can never act for a specific product, right? So they don't have 10 or 100 products. Mm-hmm. They have typically hundreds of thousands of products or million of products that they need to somehow manage. So that means they always need to think in something that is somehow automated, scalable, or semi-automated at least. And with AI, we can really utilize these technologies to collect data, to structure data, and then to operate also on these huge portfolios, right? In so many different countries in the world, in many different languages. So translation capabilities are, of course, also very relevant and interesting here.
Does it also not automatically lead to the fact that companies are really having to improve the quality of the data, because otherwise you couldn't work with AI in a coherent way? Like if it was fed with poor quality data, then the whole system would not work. Is that one of the biggest challenges you encounter? Or?
Yeah, I think data quality itself. So if companies are having data, then they have to have good data today already, because it's somehow regulated. And therefore, they today have really a lot of quality processes around it and defined standard operating procedures, you would say, right? That help them to collect and get this data to then create documents, product information. Because, the customer also wants to know about that stuff. But there's definitely the need to collect new information, for example, that they today do not have.
Okay. Got it. I'd love to speak more practically also, or learn a little bit more in very practical terms how your guys' solution works. How can we really, looking at it from an outsider's but maybe potential client point of view, imagine the process to be like when you find like, look, we really do need to work on an automation tool here, like this is killing us internally, and we have a lot of potential in reading the data that we have, but we're not using it maybe.
Yeah, in the end, there's like 3 ways where we can support companies. And this is at the beginning is when you receive, for example, safety data sheets or product information. Yeah. So to get this data from a document or from a specification or an endpoint and map that into your IT system. Yeah. So this is the data extraction, and preparation in the end. How can we get the data inside the company? Yeah. And so this is very, very strongly automate the process.
And it doesn't have to be SAP, right?
It does not have to be SAP, right? We can provide the information in any kind of format, yeah. And then it will be like inside the company, where we can then build the product compliance data lake, where we contextualize this compliance data and also connect it to other data sources in the end. Yeah, so that's like for the purpose of like internal reporting needs. But then also we have the possibilities to prepare this data in a form that it's consumable by customers or internal stakeholders. Yeah, so that we have a very flexible API structure where we can then provide this information. And here, what we can also mention is the high complexity of this EHS data, because you always have different information that you need to prepare for different regulatory areas. Yeah, so regulation in Europe is much different than in the United States or in China or Japan, for example. Yeah, so this gives and then we have the languages, different languages, right, and translations. So this gives the data provisioning part also a certain complexity that's not easy to deal with. Yeah.
Super interesting. Anything to add?
I think it's important also for the companies to create these new environments, right? Because I mean, this topic of sustainability is not something for today and perhaps the next year. Yeah, it's really something that will be standard in our business and our operations. Yeah, the new regulation that's coming up is about the design of products, basically, so that we can get into a circularity, economic circularity. And I think this is really like not a sprint, it's a marathon in the end, right? Where you continuously will have to work on. And that I think is important to add, because the better you work today, to design this environment, to automate it early, the less work you will have in the future. Because I think a lot of work that is today performed manually needs to be done the next time with the same amount of work, right? So that I think, and there will be more regulations coming up. This I think is pretty clear. So you need to automate to be able to handle it. Yeah. Also, when we think about the PFAS regulation in the US, it's relevant for mid of next year already. And this is coming from the EPA. The timeline is tough. And I think the risk for incompliance is very high at that point, right? Yeah.
Thank you guys for this conversation. I hope you got some clarity on that very important question on how to automate and reporting, make it better, being able to read data better as a result. And stay tuned. This was it for this week. Hope to see you next week again. Bye-bye.